Welcome to Off the Deep End. This podcast endeavors to bring you compelling, inspiring content to encourage you to pursue your dreams, reach for your potential, and stay aligned with your purpose and vision. So welcome. I'm so glad that you're here to join me today. This is the first podcast of 2024, and we've only been doing this for a year. So why don't you tell everybody, about yourself and how we connected, and we'll take it from there.
Sounds great. And first, before I say anything else, I want to say thank you again. We were just saying before you hit record and made it official that, you have come into the Power Girl multiverse, as we call it, at such an incredibly powerful time, because it really is truly together is how we get through this. And I was in a moment where I was literally like Atreyu in the swamps of sadness watching my horse die, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? So you came in a moment where I really needed some acknowledgement, and it was really powerful. And then watching your podcast and all of your incredible guests, feeling so honored to be included in that lineup is just, really, really an honor. So I want to thank you for that. I can't thank you enough for that. So to introduce myself, my name is Power Girl Christina. That is what people in the interwebs know me as. I've got an extensive background. You can see that all on LinkedIn, which is where we met, Rachel. And again, coming into my inbox at a time when I really needed the support. And very grateful for LinkedIn, for what's happening over there. It's mind-boggling. Nobody believes me. Nobody believes me. When I go anywhere else, I try so hard to say, guys, you're missing the show. You think the show is on Twitter? Oh, you are so wrong. Real professionals are waking up and really questioning this new normal in a way I never thought that I would see. So, it's just been powerful. So to meet you there, to have you come into my inbox, really, really, really cool. And then the fact that you're from Boston, the East Coast, which is where my grandson is, he was in Long Island, now he's somewhere else. And so I love, and East Coast is rad. I love it. So this is so cool to go coast to coast like this. I'm here in Northern California. My last name, will just say it, is Gers, Christina Gers, and that matters because my story goes way, way back. So when you finally stumble into the Power Girl multiverse, which is what I call my catalog of Rumble channels, because Rumble is the last place that has so far not censored me too much. I do think I'm being shadow banned, but I do have quite a catalog over there. And it's, quite a few channels that have been manifesting in the multiverse since I began this journey 3 years ago. I'm about to celebrate my third year anniversary as Power Girl Productions.
Awesome.
And it's powerful. It's we've been doing this under medical emergency. My story and my medicine and my message is hugely around PTSD. I know that you've had a few on that have the same experiences, and we've talked about your experiences. And I think that at this point in the new normal, if you don't have trauma, you must really be plugged into the matrix. Right?
Yeah, well said. Yeah.
So some of those of us who saw it coming on, the new normal coming on really head on, it's been really traumatic. So we talked about that last night in the Power Girl multiverse on my Keeper of the Flame channel, which is my exposure whistleblower channel, my technical channel where we get really, really up in the clouds and we just let it ride. So we did that yesterday. It was a lot of fun. And you said you enjoyed listening to that a little bit.
I did.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So, so where I come from, to go back to the beginning, San Francisco girl, born and raised. I tell everybody, born on California Avenue, In San Francisco. I've been a utility worker in the San Francisco Bay Area most of my life. And by utility work, I mean I was a gas first responder. That's what I ended my field career as. And I began it as a tap auditor, the utility work, climbing poles in San Francisco and shutting people's cable off. And then got up to PG&E, which here in California is what I've been calling for years the kings. They truly are the kings of California. And they have proven it beyond the shadow of a doubt. Their tyrannical rule through the story, the epic tale of Power Girl is what I call it, because I have been fighting. I nickname them Rothschild Inc. for reasons I won't get into. It goes way back. Anybody who's familiar with Deborah Tavares might have a hint of why I call them Rothschild Inc. But anyway, that I spent the last 20 years as an up and comer, just flying colors, rock star in the energy industry, and was tapped to come into the academy in 2013 at the same time that I was losing my mother, and she was dying of cancer. So she was the first Power Girl, and that's why we used her birthday, the end of April, as Power Girl's birthday, because she's the first one that showed me what a forklift is and how to wrench on cars and, all of the things that usually guys learn from their dad.
Yeah.
I learned from my mom.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's a little bit of my background. Nobody really knows my story, Rachel. Nobody's asked. So,
Hold on. You've been a guest on other podcasts and nobody's asked you your story?
Well, one person has asked. To be fair, another woman,
Wow.
another woman. I think that, yeah, to be fair, but this is the first time someone has really truly shown it feels like a genuine interest. So, yeah, it's been incredible to me, especially considering I've put out press releases. I've started my own multimedia empire. I'm going to be so bold as to say. I'm far from finished here. And I had to do all of that to still not be heard my whistleblower story. So that's the power of going up against Rothschild Inc., as I call it. And I try to illustrate it by saying this. I'm here from Silicon Valley. That was where I was born and raised, literally in the heart of it. I've watched the whole thing grow up. I've watched it all manifest. And I used to work over there on the peninsula, amongst the giants, Google and DreamWorks, all the big ones, Google, all of them. Facebook, I used to drive by Facebook all the time. And so that's what I grew up and I saw the whole thing manifest. I also saw what it did to locals in the area as things started to become gentrified and things became incredibly expensive to live in that area. So, and this is how I try to illustrate it, think of Jeff Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and all these, billionaire technocrats that we know the Silicon Valley is known for.
Yeah.
Now think of what happens when the power switch is turned off and how much power they actually have. As Cersei Lannister says, there's power and then there's actual power. So my employer, PG&E, which of course is just the face of the Northern California branch of the energy industry in the United States, is one of the most powerful entities, power energy entities in the country, because Silicon Valley, is such a huge mover and shaker. So that's where I come from. That's where I cut my teeth. That's where I learned how to be an adult. I was amongst those kind of guys, the guys that were up on the poles in the middle of an ice storm, ice storm, trying to get the power back on. And where I come from, we don't go home until the job is done. And if that means, days, then that's what it is. So, I feel very honored to be part of that incredibly skilled workforce. That's where I have gotten all of my swagger, was being around men like that, men and women, frankly. And so when it all came tumbling down around my ankles, it was the most terrifying thing I've ever been through. So that was, being a whistleblower was definitely not something I sought out.
Yeah.
What I was seeking out was medical care for my complex PTSD that I've had since I know I'm at least 9 years old. That's when my whistleblower story begins, when I was 9 years old.
So can you take us through now the PTSD? I know you mentioned it started really, as a child, that you had to be a whistleblower about abuse. I've read a little bit about that on LinkedIn. You can touch on that if you like, or just go into the more recent whistleblowing that you were again uh, called to do against your former employer, and why, to the degree that you're comfortable. Story.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I would say for me, what keeps me going is learning the lessons and gleaning that what we used to call the key takeaways. And so I think that's probably a good, place to focus. And for me, what I've learned in my journey is really I think I was starting to really understand that the trauma was becoming very physical. And I have a feeling that your audience is probably well versed in what I'm talking about. So there, you can have PTSD your whole life, just like me, and have it never ever interfere with your work-life balance in the sense that you're toppling over. Like, you're like, maybe I need to go to therapy, maybe I need to get some more exercise, maybe I need to do cupping, maybe I need to do something because I can feel, we'll say, the cup just getting fuller and fuller. The problem that I encountered was that when I started to actually seek out the medical care that I needed, one, it wasn't there. It just wasn't there. And then two, these medical benefits that I had thought, I mean, again, the power company, you'd think that working for the power company is one of their highly skilled field workers, that you would have the best insurance money could buy, right? I mean, you'd think it's supposed to be the best job in California, one of the best jobs you could get in California. And the pay scale was certainly there, and it was all there in theory, but when I actually had to tap into it, it just literally failed to work for me time after time after time after time. We could get into the specifics of that, but it's just not even necessary. What I found in my freedom fight, because I'm just one of those people, because I've been taking care of and fighting for my sovereignty since I was young. I've discovered quite a few, let's say we've uncovered quite a few swamp creatures in our California freedom fight, because we refused to stand down. And when our system was crumbling around us, really, truly, the backstory is that I was a very vocal safety chair in San Bruno during the San Bruno incident. I was actually the safety chair on the San Francisco Peninsula during the San Bruno years. I was very vocal there. I did not agree with the way they were handling the situation from the very beginning. And I felt, as a leader, safety leader in the company, it was my responsibility to speak up. So I did. That put a target over my head. And I have been well versed in how Rothschild Inc., the mob, aka the mob, works. They tap you, make you feel special, tell you you're going to have a huge future with the company, when really in the hidden hand is holding the knife. And they're waiting. They're either going to make you or they're going to break you. You're either going to be one of them or you're going to be dust. And that was that started for me in 2013, or I'm sorry, the end of 2012, our last year of the dragon. That started for me when I was tapped to go into the academy as their first female senior technical instructor, the first in the history of gas operations, at least, to be an instructor of this highly technical job, career, work scope that it takes to deliver energy to the customer's front door, whether they be residential or commercial. So, there's a lot of work behind that. As people don't realize, they don't even think about their utility workers until they go to flip the switch and it doesn't come on, the power doesn't come on.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, those guys are the most important people in the world because those are the ones that are going to restore your power. So that's who those are the people that I was fighting for when I realized that my benefit structure was not functioning the way it was supposed to. And I realized we just celebrated an anniversary on March 22nd. Yes, 3/22. I got the phone call from workers comp from Pacific Gas and Electric's workers comp that they were, she tasked, the hidden hand was, she was trying to tell me that they had interviewed the people they were going to interview, they had done the investigation that they were going to do, and yet I had never had the phone interview. Nobody asked me anything. They only interviewed the 3 men that I accused of abusing me into medical retirement, basically. They found out I had PTSD. They gang stalked me. Well, just at a really high level, that's what happened for 4 months straight until I just had a collapse. I had a complete collapse of my system. My endocrine system just went haywire, and I had to call it for something in the morning to the nurses hotline in February 2019 and say, I am not fit for duty. I deal with explosives for a living. I'm the person that's making sure that the natural gas appliances and the delivery of natural gas is safe and contained in the customer's home. And I'm telling you right now, I am not safe and contained. So until I can get contained, I can't come back to work. So about a year after, let's see, 20, it was 3/22/2020. At the same time, COVID's being rolled out. And I'm seeing all this unfold. I was already wide awake, which was part of my collapse because I realized that my, high salary and my high tax bracket and all these things were funding these criminals. I recognized right away that the fires in California were incredibly irregular. I could tell that because I was a combustion expert. And I understood heating value, and the signatures that I was seeing were not matching up to what was being told, in the news. I was also hearing firsthand accounts because I work here in Northern California, Humboldt County, which is where everybody, a lot of people refugeed to from Paradise, from Redding, from Santa Rosa, from all these places. So I was hearing the first, hand accounts of what was actually going on there. So all of that came at a culmination at the same time. And like I said, became fit for duty. And in March 2020, I was basically told, unequivocally that was I don't know how, I can't explain to you how she told me that I was going to be blacklisted, but after that phone call, I got off that phone, I knew. And of course I followed all the directions and I went through all of the footwork, and that's what took 5 years. It took 5 years for me to get denied workers' comp, denied Social Security, and called a conspiracy theorist as a domestic violence survivor. That is part of my story. I consider when a pedophile infiltrates your family and your household and assaults your children in that way, that is domestic violence. I'm calling that if you come into my home,
I'd be with you there,
and you molest my daughter, you're a domestic terrorist. So that was the biggest reason I spent 17 years in Stockholm syndrome trying to recover, but I survived that. Thanks again. I have to take a quick break.
Yep. Take all the time you need. It's okay.
And say, that I got to say all the glory goes to God here, because thank God I was raised in a place I never felt at home, the church, with a very strong faith foundation family. that kept me in Christian school. And, thank God for my Christian school background. And showed me, how to rely on a loving, living Savior in times of trouble. And I've really perfected that over the last 5 years. And we have gone through all of this together. He has been my, fourth man in the fire, because it has really been me, my soulmate who I met when I moved up here. So there's so many happy blessings in this story. And my service dog, Moxie, my Belgian Malinois, my love. It's been all three of us and Jesus in the fire. And, because this is what happens when corporate evil attacks a human being. They're not just attacking that one human being. My whole family has suffered for this.
Yeah.
So, and unfortunately that wasn't the end of the story. It wasn't just PG&E. Unfortunately, I also went viral at Costco trying to assert my right to breathe freely as a domestic violence survivor and grocery shop at the same time. I was given pre-approval by store management. I told them when I would be there. I said I was coming. I only come into town once a week for my therapy appointment, and I would be coming shortly after therapy. I thought we had an accord. He said I could shop without a mask. I said I wouldn't talk to anybody. I wouldn't bother anybody. I'd keep the distance. I'm in and out. I work off of a list. I shop like a dude. I said I'm just really need to get my essentials if that's okay. I'm losing my career. I need to be able to get the best price. We had this conversation. I explained to him that I had already been attacked at Grocery Outlet 2 months before that. And I had the mask on at that time. So when they attacked me at Grocery Outlet and encircled me, truly a zombie attack of masked strangers that were screaming profanities at me while I was disassociated, completely disassociated, trying to warn them. I had only lowered my mask for a moment to breathe because the symptoms started to come over and I needed to breathe. And the next thing I know, I'm surrounded. And that was at Grocery Outlet. And it got really ugly. It was really, really ugly and frightening. And it took my physical PTSD to another degree. The week after that was when Costco clinched down and they said, "You will not be allowed in here without a mask." And I said, "We'll see about that." And so I just, had the conversation with them ahead of time because I knew there was going to be trouble. I need you to give me reasonable accommodation of just letting me breathe freely. They tried to get me to put on a face shield. And I said, "No, this is not going to happen." I said, "I'm going to come in free of apparatus and I'm just going to shop. Okay. And it's going to take 20 minutes. And I said, or you can just give me a written confirmation and your signature and date that you're going to go against your own policy. You're going to go against the Disability Act. You're going to go against civil rights law, and not allow me in here, even though right on your own mandate, which is not a law, it says I am exempt. I am exercising my exemption as a mental health PTSD well-documented patient. And so all I need is written confirmation that you're going to oppose all of those things. And you'll never see me again until we're in court." He said, "Okay, fine. You can shop without a mask." Well, the next week I came on the approved time, and he met me with an ambush instead. So anyway, yeah, that was unfortunately, that was truly the beginning of the most horrific time of my life, because what happened was, of course, the mask zombies pulled out their phones. Everybody had footage of me being disassociated, desperately trying to communicate my disability, encircled by another mass mob, and it went viral. And the next thing I know, I'm on the New York Post, I'm on Newsweek, I'm on Al Jazeera, in medical emergency. but nobody knows that I'm in medical emergency at the time. So I haven't spoken to my grandson since then. My daughter will not answer the phone for me. I've had people text me and say, "Have you seen this? Have you seen this?" That was an excruciating 48 hours. Everybody that I knew, everybody in my uncle on Facebook was sending me messages of these horrific videos that were popping up all over and making sure that I saw every last one of them. That was unreal. So, and it was also the beginning of my relationship with my Belgian Malinois. So I came home that day after having that horrific experience. Oh, and I was arrested, handcuffed, and marched across the parking lot.
For that
And then
reason.
and then reported on in my local area as having tried to rob Costco. I was for robbery. I was detained on suspicion of robbery is what was reported.
And you were going to do that without a mask.
Yeah, right. When everybody else was, had a mask on.
That, yeah, that makes
Makes perfect
perfect
sense. It makes perfect COVID sense.
What the hell? I'm sorry, but that whole,
It's a
if
mad,
we
mad
could
world.
rewind just a little bit,
Sure.
because there's a lot there. There's a lot of experiences that you've been through that are really traumatic, and I'll say it, unfair. And first of all, I want you to know I honor that.
Thank you.
You've come through a lot, and I know you still are. And I was wondering if, again, only if it's comfortable for you, just for the sake of context as we move forward, would you be comfortable sharing anything specific about the experience at PG&E and what led to that amount of crisis in your life and being a whistleblower to that extent, to the degree you're comfortable, please, only.
Thank you. What a great question. Wow. I knew you were going to be amazing. I've seen your other podcasts. I'm like, wow, this is going to be a good one. It's also going to be a hard one, but we can do this. It's important. So first, just baseline. I have been abused at PG&E almost my entire career. It is written into their script. It is how they control. The best way I can describe it is they are the head of the snake. They are the top of the pyramid. They are the capstone. If you think about it, Lucifer, the angel of light, was cast down as lightning. And that has been my experience. I mean, these people are as evil as they get. And like I was just telling a good friend of mine recently, the psyops that I've had to endure from these women that were so strategically dismantling my incredibly hard fought career were really nasty. And it was really difficult. But it really just started. The whole reason why I even wrote the very first letter, the very first email, before I even blew a whistle, what was happening was they were not taking into account my incredibly stellar career. They were denying my, or the medical evidence that I provided that not only proved my disability, my PTSD disability, but also proved that somehow I had managed to work 16 years in the company in one of their highest paid and highest skilled, departments. And it had never been a problem before February 2019. It had never been a problem. It had never gotten in my way. I had had a very extraordinary career in the company. And not only that, they had trained me to be a public speaker and technical information delivery specialist. So I was absolutely dumbfounded that in the moment when I just needed medical attention for my PTSD, that's it. That's all. That's all I was asking for. I was just asking for some accommodation. I was asking them to get the wolves off of me because for 4 months straight I was being gang stalked. I'm like, here I am, one of the most celebrated, field employees and management employees, because to illustrate, again, the first female senior technical instructor in the history of the company, in the history of gas operations, we'll say, at least, right? Now, if I was a man, would I even have to say that? Probably not. I've seen it. I wouldn't have to say that. I would automatically be given the respect. And I never asked for respect. I've always been a very, approachable, loving, kind. I approached my trainees in a loving, empathetic way. So I was never leading with ego. So here I was, I had this the reality was, and this is the gaslighting that goes along with cancel culture. Um, they were telling me that I was crazy. They were telling me, they're like, you're crazy. You're going through menopause. And we're just going to excuse you. Okay. Is that okay? We just excuse you and not give you medical attention, not give you the investigation that is required. Now, this is where we got to back up and say, I was a federally regulated energy delivery field employee. There was no more safety critical job in the company because I was the liaison between the customer and the highly dangerous commodity that they were using. And I say that I'm really tentative with that because I don't want anybody to think that natural gas is highly dangerous, because it's not. Under the right circumstances, it's actually very safe and effective and clean energy. But that's what you need a highly skilled technical, technician for. That technician is what's going to harness that power of natural gas and turn it into utilize it so that you can utilize it, we'll say, right? That's what a utility worker does. That's what I did on a daily basis, multiple times a day. So here I am with this catalog and a very clear record of being a star employee, a dedicated employee, never having any disciplinary problems, and in medical emergency, PTSD emergency, and they just wanted to tell me I had menopause. I was overreacting. She said, I know what she said to me. This is what I knew. This was on March 22nd. It was surreal. Because again, you have to understand, I'm wide awake. I know what skull and bones is. You know
Right,
what I mean?
that's the
Like I know what's
322 for
going on.
anybody that doesn't know. Yeah,
Yeah, I
go
know
ahead.
what's going on.
Mhm.
And at least in the spirit, in the spirit, as I say,
Yeah.
I'm not paranoid. I'm just saying in the spirit, this is what was going on. And so she was basically saying to me, I know what you think happened. I know what your opinion is of what happened. And I said, no, 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 no. I said, there's fact and there's opinion, and I'm telling you that what happened and what I've documented. It was all documented. I literally followed everything to the teeth just so that I could get my medical attention, just so I could get my workers' comp benefits, just so that I didn't end up destitute and on the streets. And she refused. She denied my and that was where it began. And so, I was denied workers' comp. I tried to appeal it. Well, no, I couldn't. I'm sorry, I couldn't appeal it because because that started that started the cancellation, we'll say, the cancellation process. Because in June, actually back up 2 months before that, in June, I was let go of my position. So before they denied my workers' comp, they made sure that they collected my keys, you know, um, got my uniforms, and my manager I mean, it was so inappropriate the way they handled the whole thing. He refused to do it himself. He was only giving women the task. of all the things that needed to happen to basically dismantle me from being a PG&E employee, slowly and painfully and completely outside of the law. That is not what's supposed to happen. The contract, employment law, disability law, California Rehabilitation Act, equal employment opportunity. I mean, all of the laws were being broken. All the processes and their own standards of procedures were being completely ignored so that they could silence me, so that they could get rid of me. Okay, so it was even actually not even that diabolical at first, because they were really just trying to get rid of my pension. I was a pensioned employee. They were just trying to get rid of my pension. Since I left the team here in Eureka, the first responder team, and to clarify that, because I know some people have some confusion around that, as a gas service rep, which is the title of the job that I did at PG&E, we responded to natural gas emergencies and sometimes electric emergencies, downed wire, stuff like that. If we were available, we were the first response team. We were the 24/7 coverage. So we were the first ones on the scene. If it was a PG&E emergency, then I became the incident commander over the fire chief and over the police chief. So it started with workers' comp, and then the next thing you know, they put me on long-term disability. The conditions of being on long-term disability was that I needed to work with a third-party contractor who was going to see me through my quote-unquote Social Security application. So did I want to apply for Social Security? Did I want to go on long-term disability? No. I wanted medical attention for my PTSD so I could return to work. But that's what I got. I got, shown the door in a very hush, evil way. To use someone truly to use someone's trauma, corporal trauma now at this point, physical trauma, like my body the fact that I'm getting this far is huge testament to all the work that I've done in the multiverse, because that's the whole purpose of the podcasting, is to keep telling this story so it becomes, so we can get back to where it's commonplace. And it's my trauma expert, who they finally got me into after I screamed. I had to actually threaten self-harm. Finally got in to see a trauma expert, and she said, didn't treat me. For 2 years, I saw her every week on Tuesday. That was the appointment I was going to before Costco. But she never treated me. Not one session of prolonged exposure treatment, which is what she said I needed. She also said she did EMDR, but she didn't perform that on me either. So for 2 years I was there, and basically she was just working for PG&E to control me like everyone else was. But I didn't figure that out until she convinced me to go after PG&E in federal court. She convinced me to file a civil rights complaint pro se, because I couldn't find a lawyer. She was hounding me to find a lawyer. So this is what she's doing to me while I'm trying to get treatment. I'm finally sitting in a doctor's office, and this is what she's doing to me while she's writing off my paperwork. But she's also convincing me that if I go back to work, I'm sympathizing, quote unquote, with my abusers. And I was in a very, 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 very vulnerable condition. And she totally used that against me for 2 years. And until I finally failed in federal court miserably, and a Bob appointee again completely ignored all of the evidence that I presented, documentary evidence in their words. My evidence is extensive. It's boxes and boxes, and it's 95% of it in their own words. Because what happened when they started to gaslight me, when they started to tell me what my reality was, when they started to try to convince me that I was just going through menopause and it really isn't a problem, I refuse this. And anybody who's listening, who is going through this in this moment and dealing with these people, because cancel culture is real and it's not just in California. The best thing and the smartest thing that I ever did was insisting that everything be done in writing. When they started their investigation, the workers' comp investigation, she immediately started to ask me questions that were none of her business, frankly, because they were trying to pin my childhood trauma on as being the reason for my collapse, which couldn't be farther from the truth. I had been, I mean, any woman who's ever been in a in a skill trade at this level understands it is not easy to do. And I have never been somebody who complained about it. But it just felt like, this is the best I can describe without sounding too divisive. It really truly felt like if I had enjoyed the success and what do you call it, prestige that I had earned at PG&E as a man, none of this would have happened to me. But because I was a woman, one, it was really easy for them to just erase me, just like, because I left the academy after abuse I experienced at the academy, which was sexual in nature. I know I was set up. It's a really long story. They're really ugly is all I can say. If they want to break you, they just had no idea who they were.
You can say it.
They had no idea. And I told them that. I tried to tell them, I said, you just have no idea. And we have had, let me tell you, just to get on a more positive note, we have run Wrathchild Inc. through the ringer on LinkedIn, and I have had such a blast. I don't even know how the heck I'm still on there. But tagging Patty Poppy, because yeah, as this is all going down, they're calling me a conspiracy theorist. I mean, it was conspiracy against rights. If you could see the receipts, it would blow your mind. It would blow the extent that they went to silence me. And this is a testimony to the Most High. And when you're in his camp and when he is in your fire, nothing they've done has worked. And it was excruciating while I was going through it, but it also created me. They had no idea they were messing with Big John's granddaughter, not just his granddaughter, but his prodigy. He wasn't just my grandfather. He was my paternal father. He was the one that was taking care of me. And he knew that I was going to be a neglected child. He knew that he wasn't going to be around forever. And he poured everything he was into me, because he could see it in me. He could see that I had what he was looking for, what he needed. It was almost like a Dragon Slayer moment. Again, I'm going to be a little Gen X nerdy here, but it was like a Dragon Slayer moment where he knew he wasn't going to be able to make, because his story is deep. His story is deep. I'm convinced that my grandfather was approached and he turned them down. That's what I'm convinced, because he was wildly popular with children. He had he was like millions of views, hugely popular, and there's no way they weren't interested in him. And, that's part of the generational curse that I have now successfully been able to break. So this, the stories are so vast and wide, and that's the biggest reason why I've created the multiverse, because they all point up. I'm not anything special. The only thing that makes me special is my willingness to go, to do whatever it takes, to do the right thing in the moment, whatever it is. Does that mean that I haven't failed miserably 1,000 times over? No, that's where the trauma comes from. That's where the physical trauma comes from. I failed miserably. I failed my daughter when it came to the abuser, because of the cognitive dissonance that the American, here in America we are battling. It's really hard for us to realize, the evilness of Hollywood, the cesspool that is the swamp. We're really struggling to understand how deep and wide it really goes. And because of my experiences, I'm hypersensitive to that. So that's what I'm trying to do with my podcast. And you really before we went on, you gave me the biggest compliment because I'm really trying to help people through this cognitive dissonance, this Stockholm syndrome, because I understand it. I'm intimately on multiple levels, and so
Yeah.
I'm trying to use all of these symbols that they've used against us and flip the script
Yeah.
and use them to our good. I
Yeah.
mean, that everyone has a hero story to complete. And that circular motion of going through it and fighting the big boss and facing your Goliaths, whoever that is. And it doesn't have to be Rothschild Inc. It could just be, I mean, there's been times where just my Goliath was seeing the truth that was right in front of my face.
Yeah.
And just feeling that, I mean, you probably know as a coach, the feeling the trauma, feeling it is what it is the most important part. You cannot bypass that
Right.
and be well again. I mean, to me, that was the takeaway. That was I learned how truly overlooked PTSD is. And I'm going to take it even a step further because I am a conspiracy theorist. Proud, loud and proud. It's written into the script for a reason. There's a reason why there's no, and I could tell you, and I'm going to tell it right here on this podcast because I ain't even scared. There's a reason why your handlers do not want to give you PTSD therapy, and that's because it's trauma-based mind control. And if they cure your trauma, then they can't control you. So here's a fun little factoid. I don't know who's listening, but who's listening that knows who the Podestas are.
Oh yeah.
So one of the things that I discovered as Power Girl, fighting for my freedom and my voice here in California, and for my workforce that I come from and represent, because they're still trapped in the matrix, and I'm telling you, the PG&E is grinding their bones to make their soup. The reason why workers' comp doesn't work in California is because Alexis Podesta, John Podesta's daughter, who's not named on his Wikipedia, but I figured out who she is. In January 2020, right the month before Power Girl was filing her workers' comp claim against Rothschild Inc., Alexis Podesta was appointed by Gavin Newsom to be the workers' comp liaison. In September, it was September 10th, I think it was 2010. A transmission pipeline blew in a neighborhood that was rife with former first responders. Actually, that neighborhood had a lot of former, policemen, former firemen. Also, the accident just happened to kill a CPUC ratepayer advocate. And Alexis Podesta just happened to be the advisor to the CEO of PG&E at the time. And this is why that matters, because and I was a fairly fledgling gas service rep at the time. I also happened to be the safety chair of the area at the time. So I was very, very, very closely knit, connected to the response, not just the immediate emergency response, but also the safety culture response. So not only was I contributing to it, but I was responsible for it because it was happening in my area. Right. So that's where I was coming from. And that's one of the biggest reasons why they came so hard on me, because they knew what I knew. They listen, might not nobody else know what I know, but they know what I know. I'm neither red nor blue, right or left. I actually voted Democrat most of my life before I was canceled. Actually, before Trump. He was the first one, because to me, he's something different. He's an anomaly. He's another anomaly. I'm an anomaly. I can recognize an anomaly when I see one.
If you don't mind, I want to segue into more of the personal aspect of your story, because I know between us both, we could go on all day about Rothschilds and Rockefellers and the rest of it. But in keeping with the theme of Off the Deep End and it being about personal, compelling stories, I wonder, I know you mentioned your deep faith in the Father in heaven, and I share that as well. And you and I are both survivors of different things. And I have so much respect for you, for everything you've already been through, and again, still fighting through. And kind of, seeing that your podcast is almost therapeutic in a way, because
It is.
you get to share your story and you get to educate and inform. And I wonder though, there's so much work that I personally have done around like shifting mindset from this happened to me, or this, sort of that victim mentality. It's so prevalent in society, right? And if anyone, I mean, I've had several guests now that have all been through some really tough things. You know, there had to have been moments, and maybe there are still, just, it's just you and I right now, where you feel like, why did this have to happen to me? Why did this have to be my life? Why couldn't it have been someone else? And there's no shame in that at all, because I've been there. Everybody listening at some point probably still has moments like that when they
Oh
look
yeah.
back over their life and just go, what the hell was that all about? And I just wonder if there's anyone watching this and feeling like that right now about their situation. They're still in the thick of it.
Oh
They're
yeah.
not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel yet, like you are. They're still in the thick of it. What would you say to them?
I would say what I always say. I would say, look up, because your help is right next to you. It is, very, very, very present, help in times of trouble. Yeah, so I love that you asked me that question. You're just really good at this, Rachel. You're really good at this. Um, I have screamed at the ceiling. I can't even tell you how many times. One of the reasons why I created Rafa Radio, which is my absolutely favorite project. And you can find that on my link tree, which you can find in the bio of pretty much all of my social medias. Rafa Radio, is me taking the songs that got me through this horrific experience, and telling my story with videos.
Oh, wow.
And it's very powerful, because there have been moments where I thought I was just going to be emotionally ripped apart, literally. Like I was just going to be almost like Venom gets ripped apart by the sonic waves, and in one of my favorite Spider-Man movies, just like that. Like just get completely ripped apart from the trauma, and I won't be able to resemble or recognize myself at all. And that happened. That all happened. But I was blessed. I mean, again, this is something. This is why we always we not always, but a lot of times we dive into the supernatural in the Power Girl multiverse. And I say Power Girl multiverse because this is my expression. Something that I talked about last night on the podcast was the power of the observer in quantum mechanics.
Yes.
And when you wake up in the dream and you realize you're awake and that you have control over the dream, and I've done that in my dream world, I've just been really blessed. God has given me an incredibly unique life experience. And one of the things that it feels unique, I don't know how unique it is. There probably are people out there that hear his voice like I do, but I hear his voice like he's sitting in the room. I always have since I was a very young child. I've had a very strong understanding that he was very real. I've never questioned God in any way, shape, or form. I was given a glimpse, believe it or not. I mean, when I was 7 years, the only time I ever remember an out of body experience. This is the only time I've actually ever seen my body on the bed beneath me. I think I was sick. I don't remember exactly what triggered it. Maybe it was just any other night, but I was 7 years old at the time, and I remember being lifted up out of my body, and I saw my 7-year-old body on the bed, and I was like, what am I even seeing? Like, my 7-year-old self was not registering. And I think I was remembering it as a dream I remembered it as a dream for most of my life until I matured and got, really started to grow into myself. When I realized, I think that was an actual thing that happened, because I was very gently lifted up, into the sky. And the next thing you know, I'm in this, what I'm calling the third heaven, because that's what I've heard people describe it. And it sounds like that's what it was. It was almost dim. It was kind of dimly lit, and felt like a kind of twilight kind of area where it was like an in-between area. And it felt a lot like a social working area where there's a lot of hustle and bustle, but it was also very peaceful, very calm. But there was a lot of hustle and bustle. And I was very acutely aware that I had an angel escort with me, but that person, as with all of my other angel encounters, did not show themselves. So we had this like telepathic exchange that was happening, as with my other angel encounters that have happened in dreams. But in this particular one, I was standing on what I'm calling the sea of glass, because I've heard people is that the firmament? I don't know. I believe in the firmament after this. After everything that I've learned, I think it's flat, guys. I really think it's flat. But anyway, I digress. I was standing on the sea
We're
of glass.
going everywhere today.
This is the multiverse.
We're touching on everything.
Listen, I'm leveraging my trauma fracturing. I know how to do that. So anyway, yeah, I was standing on the sea of glass, and I looked over, and I heard them say, "You sure you want to do this?" And I remember what I was looking down at was scenes of my life. And I don't remember any of those scenes. I only remember the experience. I don't remember what I was actually looking at. But I do remember, the entity, the angel, telling me, asking me, "Are you sure?" And they said just like that, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And of course, the 7-year-old me was like, "Yeah, sure," like, because that's me. I've always been that way. That was, my biggest heartbreak at PG&E. I'm like, but I'm the good one. So I was like, "Yeah, sure." Well, what was the part that I remembered about this, and why I remembered it all of these years, was the minute I said yes, I mean, like, split second thrust, like wormhole thrust back into my life. And I remember thinking, oh no, what have I done? That was that was my chance. And that was, to not do all this. And that was the moment. And Rachel, when you asked me the question that you just asked me, the answer to that is because of that glimpse. The reason why I was able to suffer all of these things, and the personal trauma is extensive. I mean, I've had, I'm 52 years old now. I've had 52 years of fight or flight. I've lived in fight or flight for 52 years, and it has never, still to this day, to your point, is not ceasing. And I believe that, I truly do believe, and this is again referencing the podcast from last night, the reason why we go all over the place, one, because I'm Spider-Man, I can, and two, because I'm not, believe it or not, any more special than anybody else. I'm just willing to do it. I'm willing to believe that I can. I've just always believed that I was a superhero, even when I was little. I don't know if that was my grandfather convincing me I was a superhero, or if it was just being, I mean, we had the real American superhero growing up. We had Spider-Man. We had all these great superheroes.
Wonder Woman.
Right, Wonder Woman, exactly. And so, to me, yeah, I just feel like I was born for this. I feel, to quote Lady Gaga, I feel born this way. I feel like I was born for this. I really do. I feel like he has something very specific that he wants me to do. And I really believe, if I can pinpoint it, it's to be empathetic to the most suffering human being in the world, to the person that is so completely unseen,
Mm,
so unheard, so undervalued, to understand how a veteran puts a bullet in his or her brain, to understand how excruciating life is, so that I can use my voice, to, one, help people access that empathy for those that are deeply traumatized. We all went to see The Sound of Freedom, but do we understand that we're working alongside, we're interacting with people that are victims of trafficking, SRA, all these horrific experiences, and we wouldn't know that by looking at them, and that we need to, try to access that empathy if we're ever going to get anywhere as a human race. We're garbage as a human race if we can't get better at this. So I feel like that's my calling. Number one is to point out, the suffering deserve, their space, that to heal, to feel. You can't expect somebody to process trauma if they don't have any time to feel it, and nobody's talking into that, or maybe not nobody, because I think you are, Rachel. I think I see that you're talking into that void. And that's number one. And then number two, the next step for me, the actualization of Power Girl, is to then really harness that. Like, once there's so much more than just processing the trauma and getting out of fight or flight and getting into something that resembles balance. I'm going to be completely honest. I think it's, if we ever get back to balance, it's going to take a lot to get back to balance. We are way out of balance. And so, the more the individual, this is my message, the more the individual can balance themselves on the quantum level, it's already happening. I see it already in my life, where my processing my trauma, my healing my generational curses and wounds and all that, is starting to change the nature of the multiverse. It's things in, where my whole life it feels like it has been attacking me, because I had this high calling that I had to somehow, not just live through, but actually be beefed up for. Like,
yeah.
I've been rocky in Russia for forever, like Siberia, building up to this moment, because my job is to tell you, you're the superhero. I'm not even the superhero. I'm here to tell you that you are, and that what I've accessed is no different and no more special than what you could access, because we've been lied to about the supernatural. It is
Yep.
everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And there's just as much benevolence out there as there is evil, if not more, and what they're trying to distract you from, and this is the powerful message I tried to drive home last night, is that you, the observer, is is the center of it all. You are the center. And if you can do what I've done and just step out of the theater, or say, at first I couldn't step out of the theater at first, because that scared me. Frightened me to no end. That was what caused the collapse, this thought of financial insecurity. If you can face your deepest fear, and just do it one breath at a time, one task at a time, one step at a time, before you know it, you can do anything. But you have to be willing. That's the number one thing. And so if you're in that desperate place, number one, you can't do it by yourself. You cannot. So you got to look up. I could never have gotten through any even one day of being Christina Gerse if I didn't have that loving Savior right by my side. And I can tell you, there are many times I felt a million miles away from him and he was still right here. So all you have to do, all I had to do, I'll just speak for myself, all I had to do was to finally say, I can't do it. I know you think I'm a superhero, and I even think I'm a superhero, but I can't do this. This is way bigger than me. And it started with, breaking the Stockholm syndrome, getting away from the abuse, standing up and saying, no, I deserve better. I am priceless. I am the apple of my heavenly Father's eye. No one is exempt from that. I don't care how far down the scale you think you've gone. I mean, my trauma took me to some really, 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 really dark places, and I've done some really, really dark things in my life. And it doesn't matter. It didn't matter in that moment when I said, okay, I can't do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. And I'm giving it all to you. I'm giving it up to you. And the next thing I knew, and it didn't happen overnight, moment that I was able to open my heart and say, Jesus, you take the wheel. He started changing it from that point on. And now 7 years later, I am who he made me to be. And I can tell you that 7 years ago today, I felt like I was, lower. I could have walked under a snake with a top hat on, as my stepdad used to say. I felt lower than low. I felt like I was, I knew I was busted into a million pieces. I never thought I would be whole again. And, that's why I'm loud and proud with the multiverse, because now all of those shattered, I said to the enemy in the spirit last night, you're going to laugh at this. I looked the enemy right in the eye in the spirit and I said, I am going to shine from every single millions of pieces that you thought you left me in. I am going to shine from every one of those pieces.
Fantastic answer, an honest answer. And I am proud and honored to have even just a tiny piece of being part of the reason you get back up on your feet and at the mic. And I'm excited for you. I'm excited for we the people. I feel like this is an amazing time to be alive. There are so many people that are like, oh, we're doomed. It's all over. And I'm just like, stop, because think of the biblical story about how, Joseph was sold into slavery by his own brothers. And yet, little did his brothers know he'd be the one to save their lives. And I think that's the right story where it says what the enemy meant for evil,
Yeah.
what God turned around
turns
used
for
for
the
good. And I feel like, there's a word being thrown around now, and it just fits, is transmute. So anything that's thrown at us for evil, right? I mean, that's the original transmutation story right there. Anything thrown at you or I that's meant for evil gets turned right back around and used for good.
Yes.
And you and I are in this strange, I love how you said it in your podcast last night, wildly complicated life, right? Because this is just a part of what I do, and this is just a part of what you do. And there's so many other things, so many other aspects to our lives, and yet we're here now. We didn't live 150 years ago when they were still growing food in their backyard. Unfortunately, we're hopefully getting back to that. But we're here now. And, you know, I'm honored to stand shoulder to shoulder with people like yourself, and a few others that I've had on that are just warriors for truth,
Mm-hmm.
and very empathetic souls as well. And whatever happens and however it happens, is there a plan? Isn't there a plan? Whatever. However anything happens, we're going to need a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
that know how to speak truth with heart. And that's right in your headline on LinkedIn, right? Media with heart. I love
Mhm.
that. I love that.
Thank
Is there
you.
anything else that you'd like to share with my audience today?
Um, but yeah, I just want to say thank you again. Again, please. Thank you for showing up when you did. Absolutely amazing. And this is a perfect example of how we do it. Like you said, together. We're gonna it's gonna be together. And even if it's the 3% of us, we're gonna do it together. And yeah, and I would just say to those that are still out there suffering, look up. That is the most important thing. We need to get, thankfully, this is my view of what's going on. It is getting so obviously evil. My trip down the rabbit hole was what opened my mind back up to my relationship with my loving Savior when I realized that the biblical stories were true and that these evil entities believe it. I mean, this is, it's really truly our history. Um, it just brought me so much closer to that. And it's been the deciding factor for me. And you don't have to know what that means. You don't have to know what any of it means because he's literally right there. So, wherever you're at in your journey, keep going is all I would ask. Just keep going. And whatever your heart is telling you you need in the moment to get through, I had a moment where I needed a Belgian Malinois. That's what I did. I got a Belgian Malinois. Whatever, like follow it.
Yeah.
Because we are in a quantum. We are truly in the quantum now. What the new normal is this moment where we don't get to fake it anymore. Everything we do is going to affect the web of life in a really monumental way because we're all so very connected. So,
Wow.
just that's a lot of pressure, but it's really not. Just take it one day at a time, one task at
Yeah.
a time, and keep
Yeah.
breathing and reach out for help.
Yes.
And if you place people like Rachel, people like myself, I mean, I don't care how busy I get. If somebody says I'm hurting, I need help, I'm going to stop everything so that I can sit with you and listen to you, because most of the time that's what people are waiting for. They're looking for, they're dying for, is for somebody to just acknowledge them,
Right.
acknowledge their story, acknowledge their pain, give them a hug, tell them it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and listen, sometimes you can make all those phone calls, you can pick up that 5,000-pound phone, and then nobody answers their phone. And in that moment, there's someone that will always answer the phone. He will always answer you, and he already knows. And he loves answering desperate prayers because he'll take your desperate prayer. If you don't believe me, go to the Power Girl Multiverse and check it out. He will take your desperate prayer and he will turn it into something you can't even imagine. You couldn't even imagine how good your life could get if you just turn it over to him.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you, Rachel. And thanks to everyone who listened this long to my crazy rambling.
I just thank you so much for everything you've shared. I know it wasn't easy in some respects. There's a lot that you've been through and are still going through. And I hate to say will still go through,
Oh, yeah.
because it's part of being a warrior. And
Yeah.
but you're not alone. I hope you do feel more supported with every new contact that you make, and seeing that more and more people are seeing the light, so to speak.
Yes.
And I'm just so glad that we met. And thank you for your
Oh,
time
I am
today.
too. Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.